When you are sitting in your life and you're waking up in the morning and you're like, another day, I'm so stuck. What do I want to do? How am I going to get out of this? How am I going to change it? I can't wait. Is it Friday yet? Those things, in my experience, those are choices you're making. And I think that people forget that they're a choice. And what's it like to start getting excited about this one precious life? And so do you want to create it, or do you just want to live it by default? Because you have way more choices than you can imagine.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Asian Dating Podcast. I'm your host, May Bugenhagen. I am the founder of Two Asian Matchmakers, which is a boutique matchmaking company that started in Los Angeles, but now it's all across the US, helping men who want to date Asian women find the love of their life. So I also coach Asian women to be better daters and how to date online more effectively. And this week I have a lovely, lovely guest, and Marni is as CEO and founder of the Institute for Living Courageously. Marni has cultivated a research-based, personalized, and holistic system that inspires ambitious women to shed self-imposed limitations, nurture authenticity, and live life on their own terms. She is adept at identifying and resolving thought and behavior patterns that thwart success in a collection of personal and professional spaces. Most of Marni's clients have been coaching with her for 5 years plus, a testament to the dramatic results her methods offer. I will put all of her information in the show notes. And welcome to the show, Marni. How are you?
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here and connect with you again.
Marni and I have known each other for, like maybe 14 years, probably when both of our businesses starting and taking off. And yeah, we've done a lot of things together, and it's so good to kind of circle back,
the best.
all these years later. So tell the audience who you are and what are you up to now?
So while I'm known out there in the world mostly as a dating and relationship expert, and I've been on like the Dr. Phil show and Ryan Seacrest, and that's kind of where I do most of my work. But most recently, because women have stayed with me for so long past when they get that relationship, I sort of had to align my own truth and practice what I preach, so to speak, which is that really the soul of who I am and the soul of my business was really to help women live life on their terms and create a life beyond their wildest dreams. So what would happen is many people would come to me and I'd help them like discover self-worth and self-love. And we go through the dating process, which is a process. It's not like you snap your fingers and you meet someone, even if you're the best coach on the planet. And so while they were doing that, they'd be like, well, now that I love myself and I have a clear sense of who I am, like, what else could I do with that? Right. And so they're like improving their positions at work. They were healing relationships with family. A lot of them were like starting businesses. They were pursuing travel. Like all these great things were happening in their life. And I was like, you know what? I got to tell the truth. I'm so much more than a dating coach, always have been. So the secret is out. I'm really helping women get rid of the shoulds in their life and stop waiting for the right time to live life and start having a life that feels like it's like an expression of who they are in the world, and to stop waiting, really. And it's been so rewarding and so fun as I have invented my next chapter to help my clients reinvent theirs and get past that fear.
So you're helping women live their best life, right? Big work, big life, and trying to optimize their lives for success. So how do you start? Like, where do you begin when they come to you? What is like the first 30 days look like?
Yeah. So one of the most fun things that I like to do with ladies when they first start is sort of that deep inner work. And the most important thing to look at is two things, and they go together. One is, what are all the shoulds that you have been unconsciously living your life by? I think I'm a writer, so I think about it like a good book or a good movie. And if you've ever watched a Marvel movie, that's a great example, right? Because you watch a Marvel movie or you watch science fiction and you are immersed in the world of that story and you believe everything is true, right? When you're in a movie, a great movie especially, you're like, yeah, people fly. There's galaxies, there's superpowers. You believe the rules of the world because the writer has done such a good job that's how you see life. And so when someone comes to me, I'm like, you're in your own Marvel movie, right? You have rules of your world, and they're so unconscious and so deeply embedded, you don't even know that they're rules that are true for you, but they're not the truth. And so when someone starts dismantling the shoulds, that is like a huge awakening. A great example is I had this woman that I was working with and helped her meet the guy, all that. And she's like, I'm in my early 50s. I didn't like my career. I went to school. I started this whole other career and I hate it. And I just literally can't wait for life to pass by so I can finally quit. And I was like, well, what do you really want to do? And she was like, oh, I can't do that. I have to go back to school. It's going to take a lot of money. She started like basically listing all the rules. And her dream was that she lives in a smaller town, and there's no mobile vet care. And you were just telling me about your dog that is sick, right? And when you have an animal that's really ill and you can't move that animal, having someone come to you is a really big deal. And it's very prevalent in lots of bigger cities. She's like, I want to start mobile pet care, but I'm not a vet. I'd have to go back to school. And I was like, all right, let's just start right here. First of all, you don't need to be the vet. You can hire the vet. I'm like, so she literally had never thought about it, right? Because the rules in her world were so narrow. So one of the very first things that we're doing is we're like, well, what are the shoulds? What are the rules? What do you believe that you can and can't do? What are the voices inside your head? And when you start to look at those limitations and then you go, well, I actually have choices. I think that's the biggest thing that happens in the first 30 days is someone is like, who am I that thought these rules applied? Is that really who I am today? What do I want to shed? And we have to do the second thing, which is like, stop the momentum from the old life and actually put the brakes on and be like, wait a minute, who am I today? Because today I'm living the life that was designed 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. And is that what I want for the rest of my life? And that's two really important things that are very empowering and exciting and scary all at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like a lot of times, if we have one person that believes in us and one person that kind of tells us, hey, it is possible, and just some encouragement that it will give you the courage to go ahead and do it, right? But if you're not around people who encourage you and support you, then you don't even try. I totally think that having a life coach or someone to help you transform yourself is so key, just someone to hold you accountable. So that's kind of what you did, right? Was just guide this lady into letting her see that it is possible, and just for her to have an aha moment and get closer to her goal. That's awesome. So did she start her mobile pet care business then?
Yeah, well, so one of the things that I have ladies do is I take them through this whole process where you figure out what is really, I call it blows your hair back. And then you start doing different kinds of experiments so that you can test your idea before you like leave everything else behind and make that investment. And so the first step is to start doing either observational interviews to talk to people who do that thing, to do a testing and like a scaled down version. So the next step for her is now she's actually looking at what kinds of experiments does she want to create so she can start to test her idea, right?
Yeah.
Because we want to make sure that this isn't a fantasy, that this is something she actually loves. And that is how you actually start designing your life and living your life on your terms rather than living that default life. And you get to enjoy the journey. So guess what? She doesn't hate her job quite so much, right? Because now it's like a means to an end. And she's invested and excited about the possibility of what she's creating. So she's showing up in her job with different energy. And that's happened to so many of my clients. They come in, they're like, I hate my job. I just need to figure out my retirement plan. Like, and we start working on all those things and we talk about what's going on at work and in your current situation. And what's often happening is that those clients, those women, and maybe any of your listeners are not allowing themselves to be who they really are at work. So they're being like the go-to person. They're not setting boundaries. They are working for their boss like it is their relationship, only to be really frustrated because they realize that work does not love them back in the same way. And so often when we start doing that work and we're like setting boundaries, closing the laptop on the weekends, start taking care of yourself again, exercise, well-being stuff. Oh, wait, like I'm only doing my job now. I'm not doing the job of 10 people, right? So while I'm investigating, like I'm thinking of another client who wants to retire and live abroad. So now she's setting up some experiments and doing some research to start pursuing that. But the panic of like, I hate my life, I need to change it is gone. So she feels like she can be thoughtful, she can take time to do it. And it's really super exciting. The thing is, those experiments that you do give you feedback. And so life design is very iterative. And being creative and in creation in your life actually makes it more meaningful and fulfilling. It's not the destination necessarily, it's the journey. So when you start showing up and living your life instead of life living you, everything in your life changes.
So when you say the experiments, that is really the research and for them to gather all of the information to see if what they want to do is really available for them to do it, essentially.
Yeah, and research isn't just intellectual. So I think a lot of people, like I was just talking to another client who's thinking of moving, and so she just was spending hours on Google. Top 10 places to raise kids, like that is not a lived experience. So an experiment needs to be an experience. It needs to be a lived experience. When you do an experiment, you want to actually have questions that you're testing based on what your like core values are and what you're looking for. So it's not to just say, did it work or did it not work? Right. So when this one client who wants to leave California and pursue really a different lifestyle for her and her son and date, when she started, it was like, well, where would I like to live that would be better? That's not the kind of question that is going to allow you to be in the experience of what it is that you want your life to look like. So it's instead of what's a cool place to live or with good weather, where would my kid be happy? The question we're asking is like, based on your authentic self, what are your core values? What do you love to do? How do you like to do it? What are your core motivations? What's the experience of life when you wake up every morning, and you draw open the curtains, what is it that you want to experience in your life? And so now we're creating those criteria. So one of the experiments she did was she went with her son into another place in Colorado. And she was like, wow, I didn't even realize I live in a big city. Like I saw people my son's age, their families out, and the kids are playing kind of unsupervised in a neighborhood, like riding their bike, playing stickball. She was like, I literally didn't even realize that was happening. Right. So she was like, that's cool. But also, I noticed this and this. Okay, great. So what's the next experiment? So I think it's important when you're thinking about an experiment, you are taking a bigger idea and you're scaling it down to something different. And it's an experience, not just something you do on ChatGPT or Google.
Okay, so it's something that you really go out and do it and figure it out that way, not just reading about it or talking about it. It's to actually be in the actual environment.
Yeah, exactly. I have another person who, again, really unhappy in her job, doesn't like the boss, has an idea to get into maybe one day open like a bookstore, right? She loves books and she's in entertainment. And so we were talking about it just the other day, and she's like, I need to make sure that it's not my boss, it's the industry, or is it the people I've worked for? So we're like, okay, so what have we learned? What's the test? And now instead of just like, investigating what does it look like to own a bookstore, she's like, let me start by having a book club.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
What is it like to really like lead this group, to research the books, to talk to people about books, right? So it's like a little baby idea, right? That gets her excited while she's also testing some other things. And now we're excited about it. And in the process of leaving that job and looking for something else, she's just realized, wow, I actually kind of miss my work. So I think it might have been my boss,
Mm,
right?
okay.
Right. So here's the thing. When you are sitting in your life and you're waking up in the morning and you're like, another day. How am I, what am I, I'm so stuck. What do I want to do? How am I going to get out of this? How am I going to change it? I can't, I can't wait. Is it Friday yet? Those things, in my experience, like those are choices you're making. And I think that people forget that they're a choice and that you can design your life without blowing up the life you have, so you have financial security and stability. And what's it like to start getting excited about this one precious life? We only know of here one for now, right? And so do you want to create it, or do you just want to live it by default? Because you have way more choices than you can imagine.
It's interesting that coming from talking about dating all the time, and you had a dating business, and everyone thinks that when I get that man or when I get that woman, my life is going to be great. But actually, no, it doesn't work that way. Like one partner cannot change your life. You need to change your life in general. Like if someone is dating and they're so frustrated with dating, they need to change something to get to their goal, right? This is the same thing. It's like just because you have a great house, a great husband, a financial paying job, that it's still not perfect. Like, how do you need to just really figure it out? And I think life coaches are great for that. Kind of like what you're telling me is people should seek help if they're unhappy with their lives, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You can't just
Just
try to
don't
figure it
wait it
out
out.
yourself sometimes.
Yeah, or just don't wait it out. And what you said is so true. And that's what I've been really talking about with, because I still help people with dating, because that is one part of designing your life, right? But um, that's what I've been talking about. And I was part of the problem. Like for 14 years, I was telling people, like, if you find this guy, you're gonna have everything you want. And the truth is that's just one part of your life. And that the bigger picture is this. So all those external things come from one main problem, which we haven't talked about yet, because it's like the inner piece. And that is that for most of us, especially the women that I work with, um, we were trained up sort of to believe that our worth is based on our performance and what we achieve, right? That's a good girl, right? Like, you got an A, you got that great job, you got into that great school, you got a boyfriend who's successful, you closed the deal, and you're like constantly externally looking for what's going to make you happy. So the punchline is this: that while you are actually doing that work, the most important piece of it is really understanding what it is that makes you feel at home and centered and anchored and joy on the inside, right? Because while we're doing and creating change, while we're exploring, while we're experimenting, the piece that has to shift is our identity. And being a person who believes in their dream and believes in themselves and their capability and that they're confident and they have self-worth. And so the most important thing that is really like the engine that drives all this is that work of like, who am I? Am I loving my life? Because it's a reflection of loving myself. And so that inner, and that's really in selling my home and getting in an RV and traveling around the country and having a nomadic life around the world. Like that was really the big takeaway for me was, ultimately it's about finding home in here. And from that home base, like that's the foundation on which you want to create your life that you love.
I lived in LA for a long, long time. Never thought I would leave Los Angeles, right? I had a business there, I had a house there, tons of friends. My parents lived there at the time. And then I up to move to Colorado, 7.5 years ago. And for me, I love change. I think that's also an attitude about how you embrace change. If you keep saying, oh, I hate change, then no matter what you
Yep.
do or where you go, you're going to hate change. But I've always said I love change because it opens up new opportunities and new ways of doing things and seeing things. And so, yeah, I can't see myself moving back to LA. Like I know you said you're in LA right now, but I can't see myself moving back to LA. I only see myself moving away from Colorado and someplace else because I do want to explore and see what the world has to offer. So, how do you know if it's the right or wrong thing to do? Like, do you go and ask your friends, your family, your
I
kids? Like,
love
how
that.
do you know? How do you know if you're doing the right thing or wrong thing?
Well, so there in my world, there is no right or wrong thing. It's the best thing for you at that time, knowing what you know. And when you go through this life design process, there's like a structure to it. Um, and you look at what are all the possible life plans I could create, right? You're like, wait a minute, I could create a whole like charcuterie board of possibilities. You're not really looking for that one thing. You're looking at what are a whole bunch of things that I could try. And you know what's really fun? And I like to share the story. So when I was doing this process myself years ago, and I had these three possible life plans that I was like, okay, so for in the next 5 years, here's five different ways, three ways it could go over the next 5 years. I had the life that I was doing now, like expanded or better. I had the one that was like, if I couldn't do this. And then I had the like, if money and status were no issue. And I wrote all those out. And I was just looking at this the other day for my book. And the things that I thought were like the craziest are some of the things that I decided to experiment with and explore. One of them was selling my house and living in an RV full time. Right. And that was the like, if money were no object and I could, I didn't care what it, and I wrote that was an idea I had. And I was like, well, that sounds kind of interesting. How could I scale? How could I test that? Right. So it started out with like a little Sprinter van for 2 weeks. Can't live in that. Can't live in that for a year with my husband. And then we rented like a 36-foot, we went on the road for like 6 weeks. And I had to I was really looking at some really important things in that experiment, which we talked about before. Not did I like it or did I not? Can I maintain my exercise and well-being? Can I run my business? Is the internet good enough? Do I actually, is this a fantasy? Because everyone has a fantasy of like traveling around the world in an RV or around the country. And so we came up with that list, right? And so it wasn't really about like that one idea. Should I live in an RV? It was like, what are all the different ways I could do that? And let me explore that and find the right one for me, and do as much research as I can, knowing what I'm knowing. And guess what? All those experiments along the way were so fun. So I think it's really important to get rid of that binary thinking that it's like a bad idea or a good idea. That's what our brain is using to try and make ourselves either feel safe or rationalize out of ever doing anything. And then we're just looking for the best one for us right now.
Didn't you have two cats or no? What happened to your
I
cats?
do. The two cats, Fergus and Simon, are adventure. They're adventure
Oh,
cats. So they lived with us in the RV. They, oh my gosh, I was just writing about this. Yeah, so I think the line was like, who would ever thought a girl who lived in a 4,000 square foot in LA with a housekeeper and a gardener, and a closet full of designer clothes, would live in 40 feet, that my cat would learn how to walk on a leash, and that my husband's OCD would turn out to be just great for keeping an RV really clean. Like who would have ever started gardening, like just so many different things, right? Because of expanding who I am, because of being in all those different experiences. And I think that's the other thing, right? Like I was like, can you do this with cats? Right. I didn't even know. Right. So it was like experimenting and talking to other owners and watching YouTube videos and then testing it out. And oh, my dear little cats, they are so great. They've gone in motels, hotels. When our RV was being fixed, we had to go stay at a friend's house in Atlanta. Um, and my cats had never even been around other animals, but my friend had a dog and two cats. And so I was like, all right, Fergus and Simon. And they were chill. And what I learned from my cats was that they were more flexible and adaptable sometimes than I was.
Yeah. Yeah. So before I let you go, what are the 7 spiritual questions for a meaningful life? And what is the radical living process?
Well, that's a huge question. So I'll just give you the highlights. So one of the things that I think I alluded to is that in living a life of design and being comfortable with change, which not everybody is, we want to really rewrite the metric about what is success, right? Because if success is what we were talking about, the house, the husband, the kids, whatever people think they're supposed to have, right? Not everyone is able to fulfill on all those dreams. And when they're constantly measuring their worthiness based on those shoulds, life can feel pretty crappy. This all happened for me, it became crystal clear. My dad was in the hospital. He was sick, but not to the point where I thought we were going to lose him, but he had an incident and ended up in the hospital, and it was the end. And he was unconscious for the most part. And he was laying there and he was mumbling about his credit cards. And I had this moment because my dad was an amazing person, you know, with like so much love and family and all these amazing things. And it broke my heart. I was like, here he is, maybe his last 24 hours on earth. And this is what his unconscious is like worried about, like money and bills and all of those things. And I was like, this is a lesson. Like, I'm not going to have my success be defined by anything other than things that really bring meaning and value. And that set me on this sort of like journey where I came across these 7 spiritual questions. And I'll give you 1 or 2 of them. It would be really boring if I talk about all 7 in a row. That's what my book is about. But they come from the Old Testament. I always say that if these questions had a better publicist, you would know about those as well as you know about the 10 Commandments. They're universal. They're not really religious. But these 7 questions, the story goes that when you get to the pearly gates, you know, you're asked these questions about, did you leave a meaningful life? And they don't ask, were you rich? Did you get it perfect? Did you get it right? And so one of the questions is, and I think I'll talk about an important one that is interesting. So in the original form, the first question is, were you honest in business? And you're like, that's an odd question, you know, to be asked at the pearly gate. Well, the story goes that the reason why that was the most important question is because sort of like the powers that be were like, well, if you're honest in business, when your money and your ego are at stake, you're probably going to be honest in your life. And so the way that I sort of universalized this was, are you radically honest, not just with others, but with yourself? And this question is really an important one because for all the people that are saying, well, maybe I'm just not meant to have a partner, so I'll just settle, or I don't want to make someone else mad, so I'm not going to say what I really think, or I'm going to pretend to fit in the lines because that's what people think is good enough. This question challenges all of that, and it asks you in your life to never settle, to not be in denial, to express yourself, and to really unabashedly be you. And that requires courage and it requires radical honesty. And so I'll just sort of leave it on that as one of the most important questions, that if you are honest in your life with yourself, as well as with others, and you take your last breath knowing that you were, then that is one of those things that creates meaning in your life.
I love it. I love it. What's another question?
One of the other questions that we've been talking about, like a little bit on the surface, is were you you? Were you authentically you? right? Did you figure out, number one, what that even means? Were you constantly up leveling your identity, right? The you that started your business 14 years ago is very different than the you now, right? And as we go through our life, especially the older I get, I realize that our identity and who we are evolves. I think we all have this idea of what our life's going to look like, when we're 10 or 20 or 30. And you just go, oh, this is what it's going to look like. But then life happens, right? And you're like, am I going to keep forcing and pushing through the old life? Or am I going to actually take a moment and say, who am I now? What do I really want? And be that radical, honest person, and create that. So the other piece around being authentically you is there's never a fail that comes with just trying to be more of who you are. You might fall down, you might have a mistake, you might even flat out fail, but it's not really a fail in the traditional sense when you've just practiced and put out being who you are. And that goes back to why there is no bad decision, there's no right decision, there's no wrong decision. You're just trying to put more of you out in the world and seeing where it goes.
So your book is coming out in 2025, you said? Is that?
Yeah, so long. It feels so long for now, but it'll be like a flash.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm excited for your book. Congratulations on that. And can't wait to read it. I love all
Thank
these
you.
great points you're making, and it really makes you think, right? Like, of course, I'm not the same person I was 14 years ago when I started this business. So much has happened. Like, I wasn't married back then. I was single when I started the business, and then I got married, and now I've been married for like 5 years, and I'm a very different person now than I was even 5 years ago, because you're right. Life did happen, right? I moved. I had some health scares. I have tons of stuff going on in my life, but all that makes me who I am today. But 10 years from now, I'm going to be someone totally different, right? So, which is great. And I feel like your partners in life need to also change with you, or also be open to these new interests that you may have, or these new ideas you have, or thoughts about retirement. Like, hopefully you work towards same goals and same ideas on how to retire, right? Because I've been with my man for 16 years now, or 14 years now. And hopefully we have the same idea of how we're going to spend money in our life. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a great process. I mean, look, better than anyone. Life will bring, whether you like change or not, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, is gonna like slap you across the face every now and again and be like, hey, guess what? Some stuff's gonna go down, What I like about this process is that you're not just sitting around waiting, holding on to what you have, hoping that you can hold on to it as long as you can, just powering through. This process allows you to be at the forefront of the creation of your life, so that you get not only adept at change, but you have these spiritual questions, these 7 questions to help guide you and find that home inside of you, so that you are not in the highs and lows, but you really truly believe that life is happening for you, not to you, and that you can roll with the punches when you do get punched, but you can also make sure that you enjoy the crap out of every day that you have.
I agree. I agree. So, Marni, before I let you go, how would someone get in touch with you if they want to work with you? And who is like your ideal client?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways. You can go to my Dating with Dignity website, datingwithdignity.com. There's lots of materials on there if you're single. If you want to just connect with me, I'm kind of old school these days. And that means you can find me on Instagram. It's Marni Batista _. Just DM me, send me a message, let me know that you heard me on this podcast. You can also find me on Facebook, and give me a follow on both those platforms. And I would love to give away, if anyone wants to reach out to me and ask for this, I have a 30-day process called the Calm process that helps you actually start to find that center in calm in yourself. And get clear on who you are, so that you can start asking those questions about what you want and find joy amidst the chaos that is our life right now. So you can just DM Calm on Instagram or Facebook, or go to my website.
And And of course, I will put all of your information in the show notes. And thank you so much, Marni. I so appreciate you taking the time and sitting down with me and talking and catching up. And so good to see you. You seriously have not changed. And 14 years I've known you. You look great. You look great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us on the Asian Dating Podcast. And if you want to be part of my Rolodex, for me to find you, ladies, please go to twoasianmatchmakers.com, register with me. If I have your information, that's how I can set you up. So thank you, everybody. Bye, Marni.